The second I walked into that ballroom, I heard her say it. Sloane Whitmore, my brother's perfect fiancée, leaned toward her bridesmaids with a champagne glass in her polished hand. Her voice was low, but not low enough. She wanted me to hear it. She wanted other people to hear it too. She said that the stinky country girl was here. Her friends giggled like a pack of hyenas dressed in designer clothes. Sloane did not even turn her head to look at me when she said it. That is how small she believed I was. To her, I was not a guest. I was not family. I was an inconvenience that wandered in from a small town to ruin the look of her perfect engagement party. What Sloane did not know, what nobody in that room knew, was that I signed the deed to this hotel 3 years ago. The Monarch Hotel. Every chandelier shining above her head, every piece of silverware she was eating with, every polished plate, every glass, every square inch of Italian marble under her overpriced heels belonged to me. And before this night ended, that one ugly whisper was going to cost her everything she ever wanted. My name is Bethany Burns. I am 31 years old. I grew up in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, a town so small that the biggest traffic jam we ever had happened when old Mr. Henderson's cows escaped and blocked Main Street for 3 hours. People stood around laughing, cars barely moving, and the whole town acted like it was the most exciting event of the year. I left home when I was 18, and I did not really look back. Not because I hated Millbrook. I did not. The town was simple. The air smelled like grass and rain. People waved at each other. Neighbors brought food when someone got sick. It was not a bad place to come from. I left because my family made it clear there was not much room for me there. I have an older brother named Garrett. He was the golden child, the son who could do no wrong. When we were kids, everything I did was compared to him, like I was living in his shadow on purpose. If I got an A, Garrett got an A+. If I made the softball team, Garrett had been team captain in whatever sport he played. If I won a ribbon at school, Garrett won a trophy somewhere else. My mother, Patricia, had a special way of looking at me. It made me feel like I was a rough draft, the messy version people hide in a drawer. Garrett was the finished masterpiece, framed and displayed where everyone could admire him. It was not that my mother screamed at me or hit me. It was quieter than that. She sighed at me. She corrected me in front of people. She praised Garrett with pride, then turned to me and gave advice like I was always one wrong step away from failure. She loved me in the way some people love a responsibility, not a person. So I left. I packed one suitcase. I took a bus to the city. I started over with nothing but $200 and a stubborn refusal to fail. Everyone back home assumed I was struggling. They pictured me in a tiny apartment eating instant noodles. That part was true for the first 2 years. I worked long shifts. I counted coins. I skipped meals when money got tight. I wore the same shoes until the soles felt thin. But what they did not know was that I took a job as a cleaning lady at a boutique hotel. That job changed my life. Not because cleaning rooms is glamorous. It is not. It is hard work. It is sweat and sore muscles and bending and lifting and being invisible to guests who step around you like you are furniture. But it put me inside a world I never saw up close before. I learned how hotels work. I learned how money moves. I learned what guests notice and what they do not. I learned how to solve problems before they turn into disasters. I learned how to manage people, handle complaints, and stay calm when everything around you is chaotic. I watched and listened and studied. Then I worked my way up. From cleaning rooms to the front desk. From the front desk to assistant manager. From assistant manager to manager. I saved every penny I could. I invested carefully. I made smart choices. I took risks when the timing felt right, not when the excitement was loud. By 28, I owned my first property. By 30, I owned 3. Now, at 31, I run Birch Hospitality, a company that owns 6 boutique hotels across the East Coast. The Monarch is my flagship. My pride. My favorite. But building something from nothing teaches you a strange skill. You learn to stay quiet. You learn that people underestimate you, and sometimes that is the most powerful weapon you can hold. So I never told my family. To be honest, they never asked anyway. To them, I was still the struggling little sister who could not measure up to Garrett and his middle management job at an insurance company. The irony was thick enough to spread on toast. Tonight, I received an invitation to Garrett's engagement party. It arrived last minute, of course. Probably my mother's idea. A guilt invitation, the kind she could use later when talking to friends, so she could say the whole family was there. I almost did not come. But something pulled me in. Maybe curiosity. Maybe a small, stubborn hope that things had changed. They had not. I stood near the entrance of my own hotel wearing jeans and my favorite boots. My hair still carried a faint countryside smell because I drove through Millbrook on my way here on purpose, just to remind myself where I came from and what I survived. My outfit probably cost more than everything Sloane was wearing combined, but you would not guess that by looking. The cut was clean. The fabric was high quality. The boots were well made. Nothing flashy. Nothing loud. That is the thing about real money. It does not need to shout. And it is also true that you can take the girl out of the farm, but you cannot fully take the farm out of the girl. Though you can absolutely take the farm girl's money straight to the bank. I spotted my mother across the ballroom. She was holding court with her friends, talking with that proud voice she saves for public events. She was probably bragging about Garrett, about his future, about his beautiful fiancée, about how perfect everything was. Garrett stood near Sloane, smiling like a man who believed he had won the lottery. He had no idea he was holding a losing ticket. Sloane finally glanced in my direction. Her smile was sharp, like a paper cut. She did not see me as a sister-in-law. She did not see me as family. She saw me as a stain on her perfect night. That was fine. Let her think I was nobody. Let them all think it. I learned a long time ago that the best revenge is not loud. It is patient. It is quiet. It is watching people dig their own graves while they are too busy looking down on you to notice the shovel in their hands. So I smiled back at Sloane. I walked to the bar. I ordered a drink. My staff knew not to acknowledge me. That was my rule at public events like this. I wanted my team to stay professional. I did not need attention. Wesley Crane, my general manager, caught my eye from across the room. He gave me a small, respectful nod. Everything was running smoothly. Everything looked perfect. For now, because in about 3 hours, Sloane Whitmore was going to learn an important lesson. Never underestimate the country girl, especially when she owns the ground you are standing on. The engagement party looked exactly like something Sloane would plan. Extravagant. Over the top. Designed to impress people who were already impressed with themselves. There were ice sculptures shaped like swans. There was a champagne fountain that felt excessive, even by champagne fountain standards. There were enough flowers to make a botanical garden jealous. My hotel staff had done an excellent job. Seeing their work made me proud, even while part of me wanted to roll my eyes at every design choice Sloane made. I took my drink to a quiet corner so I could observe. That is when my mother found me. Patricia Burns approached like a woman who smelled something unpleasant and was trying to locate the source. She looked me up and down. Her eyes stopped at my boots, and I saw the disapproval in her face. She said it was nice that I could make it, but her tone suggested it was anything but nice. Then she asked why I could not wear something more appropriate. She said Sloane's family was very refined. She stressed refined like it was a word I should study. I told her I came straight from work and did not have time to change. That was true. I just did not explain that my work meant running a multi-million-dollar hotel company. My mother sighed the way she always sighed at me, like I was a disappointment she learned to tolerate. She told me to at least try to make a good impression on the Whitmores, then disappeared back into the crowd to continue her social duties. And there it was. 20 seconds of conversation and I already felt like I was 12 again, failing some invisible standard nobody ever explained. I watched Sloane Air kiss her way through groups of guests. She kissed more cheeks tonight than a politician at a county fair. Every gesture was calculated. Every smile measured. Every laugh timed. Her parents, Franklin and Delilah Whitmore, stood nearby like proud peacocks, watching their prized daughter work the room. Franklin was a large man with a red face and the confidence of someone who either had real success or was excellent at acting like he did. Delilah was thin and polished, dripping with jewelry that caught the chandelier light every time she moved. They looked wealthy. They acted wealthy. But something about them felt slightly off, like a beautiful painting hung just a little crooked. I could not name it yet. But I would. Garrett finally noticed me and walked over. My big brother, 3 years older, still looked at me the way he did when we were kids, like I was his annoying little sister who followed him around. He said he was glad I could come. His tone made it clear he had not really noticed whether I was there or not. He asked if I met Sloane and told me she was amazing. I said I had seen her. I kept my real opinions inside. Garrett nodded, already looking past me toward other guests he needed to greet. Some things never change. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. He mentioned that Mom gave Sloane Grandma's necklace as an engagement gift. He said it was generous of her, and he said Sloane loved it. I felt the air leave my lungs. Grandma's necklace. The antique pendant our grandmother promised to me before she died. She held my hand and told me it was for me because I was her dreamer, her fighter, the one who would make something of herself. My mother knew this. She was in the room when Grandma said it. And she gave it to Sloane anyway. I looked across the ballroom and saw it shining on Sloane's neck like it belonged there. My grandmother's necklace. My inheritance. My memory. Sparkling under chandeliers while Sloane laughed at something someone said. The DJ turned the music up so loud I could feel it in my teeth. If I wanted my bones rattled, I could have gone to the dentist. At least there I would get a free toothbrush. I excused myself from Garrett and headed toward the restroom, needing space to breathe. On the way, I passed Franklin Whitmore in a hallway. He had his phone pressed to his ear. His face was tight with stress. He did not see me. He was too focused on his call. I heard him say they needed this wedding to happen. He said the Burns family had money enough to cover their situation. He paused, listening. Then he said they just needed to get through the ceremony, and after that everything would work out. He ended the call and walked back toward the ballroom. His salesman's smile slid back into place like a mask. I stood frozen in the hallway. For a moment, I forgot about the necklace. This felt bigger. The Burns family had money? What money? My parents had a nice house, yes, but I knew there was a second mortgage on it because I had been secretly paying it off for 4 years. Garrett had a steady job, but nothing extraordinary. There was no family fortune. So why did Franklin think there was? And what exactly was their situation that needed covering? I returned to the ballroom with a different focus. I watched the Whitmores like a hawk watches a field mouse. Every smile. Every handshake. Every laugh. Now that I suspected something, I started seeing the cracks. Franklin checked his phone constantly. His jaw tightened each time he read a message. Delilah kept touching her jewelry, not in a proud way, but in a nervous way, like she feared it might disappear. And Sloane, perfect Sloane, had hunger in her eyes. Not the hunger of love. The hunger of desperation. I started connecting dots. The Whitmores believed my family had money. But why would they believe that? Then it hit me. For 4 years, I had been sending money to my parents anonymously. I sent it through Birch Hospitality. Every month, a payment arrived that covered the mortgage, utilities, medical bills, and small emergencies. When my father needed knee surgery, I paid for it. I never used my name. I did not want their gratitude. I did not want questions. I only wanted to help from a distance. But my parents did not know it was me. And my mother, in her mind, decided it must be Garrett. Of course she did. Her golden child. Her perfect son. In her story, Garrett was secretly taking care of the family, being the responsible man she always claimed he was. I could almost hear her bragging to friends about how generous Garrett was, how he always looked after his parents, how smart he was with money. My money. My sacrifices. Garrett got the credit. So the Whitmores did their homework. They saw a nice house with no obvious mortgage stress. They heard Patricia bragging about her son's investments. They saw a family that appeared to have hidden wealth. And they targeted Garrett like sharks smelling blood. But their plan had a problem. The money was not Garrett's. There was no family fortune. The Whitmores were chasing a mirage. And when they discovered that, they would abandon Garrett fast, leaving my brother heartbroken and my parents humiliated. Part of me wanted to let it happen. Let them all face consequences. My mother, who gave away my inheritance without thinking. My brother, who never stood up for me. Let them feel what it is like to be used and discarded. But I could not. As angry as I was, they were still my family. Garrett was still the boy who taught me to ride a bike, even if he forgot that part of himself later. My mother was still the woman who stayed up all night when I had chickenpox, even if she later treated me like I was nothing. Family is complicated. You can love people and still feel furious. You can want to protect them even when they do not deserve it. So I made a decision. I would expose the Whitmores. I would save my family from a disaster they did not even see coming. And I would do it my way. I found Wesley Crane near the service entrance. He held a clipboard and watched the catering staff with his calm professional energy. He looked up when I approached. His expression softened into genuine warmth when he recognized me. He started to address me formally, then stopped when I gave him a look. He corrected himself and said my name simply, Bethany. He asked quietly if everything was all right. I told him I needed a favor. I needed background information on the Whitmore family. Business records. News. Legal issues. Anything. Wesley did not ask why. That is one reason I trust him. He nodded and said he would see what he could find. Then he disappeared, already pulling out his phone. I returned to the ballroom and tried to act normal, which became harder every minute. That is when Sloane found me. She appeared beside me like a ghost wrapped in designer fabric. Her smile was sweet enough to cause cavities. She suggested we should chat, just the two of us to get to know each other. She placed her hand on my arm like we were close friends. I let her guide me toward a quiet corner near the restrooms. The second we were far enough from other guests, her smile vanished like it never existed. Her eyes turned cold. She told me she knew about me. She said she knew I sent money home every month, playing the good daughter from a distance. Then she said something that made it clear how wrong she was about my life. She asked why someone who could barely afford her own apartment would send money to family that did not even like her. My jaw tightened, but I kept my face calm. Sloane continued. She said unless I was trying to buy their love. Trying to prove I mattered. She called it pathetic. Then she leaned in closer and said Garrett told her everything. She said he told her I was always jealous of him, always angry that I was not the favorite. She said the family only tolerated me out of pity. She smiled again, but this time it was sharp and cruel. She said she was going to marry Garrett and become part of this family, and everyone would be better off if I stayed away. She said nobody would miss me. She called me dead weight. Then she patted my arm like she was comforting a child and walked away. I stood there for a moment, processing what just happened. Sloane believed I was broke. She believed the money came from Garrett. She had no idea who I really was. It was like watching someone brag about their rental car to the person who owns the entire dealership. Honestly, if arrogance burned calories, Sloane would be invisible. Wesley appeared at my elbow, pulling me out of my thoughts. He handed me a folder. His face looked pale. His usual steady expression was shaken. He told me I needed to see what he found. I opened the folder right there in the hallway. Inside were records, filings, articles, and printed screens. Wesley said the Whitmores were not just in debt. They were under investigation for fraud. I read quickly, scanning page after page. The more I read, the colder I felt. The Whitmores were not who they claimed to be. Their real estate empire looked like a house of cards built on lies and other people's money. They were close to bankruptcy. And federal investigators were circling. This engagement was not about love. It was an escape plan. I took the folder to my car in the parking garage because I needed privacy. The overhead lights flickered, making the moment feel even stranger. I sat in the driver's seat and read again, slower this time, letting the meanings sink in. Franklin and Delilah Whitmore were running something close to a Ponzi scheme. They collected money from investors for real estate developments that either did not exist or were wildly overvalued. Early investors got paid with money from later investors. A classic con. But the scheme was collapsing. Investors were asking questions. Auditors were getting involved. Federal investigators had opened a case. The Whitmores needed an exit strategy, and they needed it fast. Then my brother entered their plan. I could see their twisted logic. Find a family that appears to have money. Marry into it. Use the connection to protect their reputation, or at least to give them cover when everything falls apart. And if possible, drain whatever assets the new family has before disappearing to start again somewhere else. But they targeted the wrong family. My parents did not have hidden wealth. The house had mortgages. Garrett had an average salary. The only real money flowing into the Burns household came from me. And I could stop it with a single phone call. The Whitmores were about to discover their plan was built on a lie. And when that happened, they would likely dump Garrett immediately, leaving him shattered. I wanted to let it happen. I really did. But I could not. So I chose action. I called my lawyer first. Rebecca Thornton answered on the second ring, even though it was nighttime, which is why I pay her what I pay her. I explained the situation quickly and asked how fast she could verify what I had. She said she could confirm within the hour. Next, I called Naomi Delaney, a forensic accountant I worked with before on a complicated acquisition. Naomi was a wizard with numbers, the kind of person who could stare at financial records and see the story hiding inside them. I sent her photos of key documents and asked her to dig deeper. Naomi called back about 40 minutes later. Her voice was tight with excitement and seriousness. She told me I was right. It was a Ponzi scheme, textbook style. But she also found something else. She searched the Whitmore name in other states and found a similar pattern in Arizona 3 years ago. Same style. Same scam. Different names. Then she told me the worst part. She said the bride's real name was not Sloan. Naomi asked if I was ready. I told her yes. Naomi said the bride was named Sandra Williams. She said Franklin and Delilah were not even her real parents. They were partners. A team. A long-running con. They had been doing this for at least a decade. Different identities. Different targets. Same game. I sat in my car with the folder in my lap and laughed. Not because it was funny in a happy way, but because it was absurd. These people had more identities than some celebrities have ex-spouses. Sandra. Sloan. And probably planning to become someone else next year. My phone buzzed with a text from Garrett. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. He asked if we could talk. He said something about Sloan felt wrong. I checked the time. 5 minutes until 9. Franklin Whitmore was scheduled to make a big welcome toast at 9. Too little too late, big brother. You should have trusted that feeling earlier. You should have trusted me years ago. But better late than never. At least he was starting to notice the cracks. I got out of the car and walked back into the Monarch Hotel with a different energy than before. Before, I was the invisible sister. The country girl people mocked. Now, I was a woman with a plan. Wesley met me near the service entrance. His face showed concern and curiosity. He said he watched the Whitmores all evening and agreed something was wrong. He said Franklin made several phone calls in the past hour and looked more stressed each time. I told Wesley I needed the AV system ready. During Franklin's toast at 9, we were going to give the guests a presentation they would never forget. Wesley asked what kind. I handed him a USB drive. On it were scans of the most damaging documents, plus everything Naomi sent. Court records from Arizona. Financial evidence. Photos of Sloan from years ago under her real name, Sandra Williams. A trail of lies stretching back a decade. I told Wesley that when Franklin raised his glass, I wanted everything on the screens. Every document. Every photo. Every piece of proof. Wesley took the drive and gave a small smile. He said he always knew working for me would be interesting, but this was a new level. Then he headed toward the control room. My phone buzzed again. Rebecca confirmed everything. The Whitmores were under federal investigation. Even better, she contacted the lead investigator, Agent Carla Reeves, who had been trying to locate them for months. Rebecca told me Agent Reeves was on her way with a team. They would be outside the hotel by about 9:15, ready to move in once evidence was public. Everything was falling into place. The trap was set. Now I had to wait. I found a spot near the back of the ballroom where I could see the stage, the screens, and most of the crowd. Sloan worked the room again, smile pasted on her face. Garrett stood beside her, playing the proud fiancé, unaware his future was about to explode. My mother stood near the front chatting with Delilah like they were friends. Two women who shared nothing except their ability to make me feel small. Soon one would learn she was played. The other would learn she pushed away the wrong daughter. I checked my watch. 8:52. Garrett texted again, asking where I was and saying he needed to talk. He said Franklin kept disappearing. He said Sloan dodged questions about her past. He said maybe he was paranoid. I stared at the message. Part of me wanted to warn him. But if I warned him, he might warn her. I could not risk that. I typed back a short response. I told him we would talk after the toast and he should wait. 8:56. Franklin Whitmore adjusted his tie near the stage. His salesman mask was back in place. He looked confident, like he owned the room. He had no idea what was coming. I thought about what Sloan said to me earlier. Dead weight. Nobody would miss me. Stinky country girl. The funny thing about people who underestimate you is that they never see you coming. They're so busy looking down that they miss the moment you rise. 8:59. Franklin stepped onto the stage and took the microphone. The DJ lowered the music. Guests turned, glasses raised, ready to toast the happy couple. I met Wesley's eyes across the room. He gave a tiny nod. The screens behind Franklin showed a slideshow of happy photos. Garrett and Sloane smiling at restaurants, on trips, posing like a perfect story. Franklin cleared his throat and welcomed everyone. He thanked them for celebrating this beautiful union. He said that when his daughter first brought Garrett home, he knew immediately Garrett was special. I almost laughed. His daughter. The daughter who was not his daughter. Franklin spoke about family and legacy. He said the Whitmores were honored to join the Burns family. He spoke about bright futures and forever and building something lasting. Every word was a lie. Then Franklin raised his glass and offered a toast to love, to family, to forever. I sent Wesley a single word on my phone. No. The screens flickered. At first it looked like a glitch. The happy photos disappeared. A serious-looking document replaced them, full of court language and official seals. Franklin's smile froze. The document was a court filing from Arizona, dated 3 years ago, connected to fraud. A name appeared on the screen that nobody in the room recognized. Sandra Williams. A murmur spread across the crowd. People squinted. They whispered. Franklin fumbled with the microphone and tried to laugh it off. He claimed it was a technical error. He turned toward the AV booth, telling someone to fix it. But the screens kept changing. Financial records appeared, showing investor money moving into shell companies. Then news articles about a real estate scam that destroyed family savings. Then photos. A younger Sandra Williams with different hair, but the same eyes. Photos of Franklin and Delilah at events under different names. Sloane stood frozen on the dance floor, champagne trembling in her hand. Her mask slipped completely. She looked terrified. Garrett stared at the screens, then at Sloane, then back again. I watched the truth click into place inside him. Franklin tried to move through the crowd toward an exit. 2 security staff stepped into his path. Delilah grabbed his arm and whispered quickly, panic rising in her face. There was nowhere to go. That is when I stepped forward. I walked through the parting crowd toward the stage, boots clicking on marble. Every eye turned to me. The country girl. The nobody. The deadweight. Wesley's voice came over the speakers, calm and clear. He introduced the owner of the Monarch Hotel and CEO of Birch Hospitality. Then he said my name. Bethany Burns. The silence that followed was heavy. My mother's face turned white. Garrett's jaw dropped. Even Sloane, in the middle of panic, looked shocked. I took the microphone from Franklin's limp hand. I greeted the room and apologized for interrupting the party. Then I said I believed everyone deserved to know who they were celebrating tonight. I pointed to the screens and explained plainly. Franklin and Delilah Whitmore were not who they claimed to be. Their wealth was built on fraud. Their real estate empire was a lie. Their daughter's name was not Sloane. Her real name was Sandra Williams. And this was not a love story. It was a con. Sloane finally found her voice and screamed that I was lying. She called me jealous. She called me pathetic. She said I made it up because I could not stand to see Garrett happy. I looked at her calmly and said it was interesting she thought that. Then I asked if I also invented the federal investigation following them. I mentioned arrest warrants issued the month before in Arizona. I said I was curious how I could fake the fact that Agent Carla Reeves and her team were waiting outside. Right on cue, the ballroom doors opened. 4 people in suits entered, badges visible, expressions serious. Sloane's face crumbled. Franklin tried to run. He took a few steps before Agent Reeves stopped him with a firm hand on his shoulder. Agent Reeves said he was under arrest for wire fraud, investment fraud, and conspiracy, and she used his name with the calm authority of someone ending a chase. Delilah started crying, mascara streaking down her face. She insisted it was a mistake. She said they could explain. Sloane Sandra, whatever she was, turned to Garrett one last time. Her voice changed to desperate pleading. She asked if he would really let his sister do this. She claimed they loved each other. She begged him to believe her. Garrett stared at her for a long moment. I could see where inside him. The woman he thought he loved versus proof he could not deny. Then he did something I never expected. He stepped away from her. He said he did not even know who she was. His voice sounded broken but certain. He said he did not know who any of them were. Sloane's expression flipped from panic to rage. She lunged toward me, screaming that I ruined everything. She screamed that I was supposed to be nobody. She screamed that I was the stinky country girl. Security caught her before she reached me. I leaned close enough for only her to hear. I told her that this stinky country girl owned the room she was standing in, paid the salaries of the people escorting her out, and would sleep very well tonight knowing exactly who she was. They led her away still screaming. Her dress wrinkled. Her perfect hair ruined. Her fake life collapsing step by step. I turned back to the stunned guests. Many looked like they could not breathe. Some stared at the screens. Some stared at Garrett. Some stared at me like they were seeing a ghost. I said the catering was already paid for, and it seemed like a shame to waste good food. I said the bar would stay open for anyone who wanted to stay. Nervous laughter spread through the room. The DJ, bless him, played something upbeat as if music could repair a shattered night. The engagement party was over. But the consequences were only beginning. The next hour felt unreal. The Whitmores were escorted out in handcuffs. Guests watched in silence, then in whispers. Phones came out. Messages were sent. By morning, half the city would know. Sloan, Sandra, whoever, screamed threats about lawyers and revenge. But her words sounded empty now. She went from future bride to future defendant in minutes. Garrett found me near the bar. He looked like a man waking from a nightmare, only to realize he was still inside it. His eyes were red. His hands shook. His world had shattered. He asked how I knew. He asked how I figured it out. I told him I listened. I watched. I paid attention. All the things I did my whole life while everyone ignored me. He went quiet. Then he said he was sorry. He said he knew sorry did not cover years of treating me like I did not matter. But he said it anyway, like it was the first honest thing he offered me in a long time. I studied his face, searching for a trick. I saw no trick. I saw remorse. I told him sorry was a start. We stood in silence. Two siblings who lived like strangers for decades, finally seeing each other clearly. Then my mother appeared. Patricia Burns looked smaller than usual, like shock made her shrink. She approached slowly, none of her usual confidence left. She started to say she did not know, but I stopped her. I pulled out my phone and showed her the truth. Bank records. Transfer receipts. 4 years of payments to the mortgage company, utilities, and medical bills. All from Birch Hospitality. All from me. I told her she believed Garrett was supporting them. I told her she bragged to people about her generous, successful son. Then I said it was me. It was always me. My mother stared at the screen, then at me, then back again. Her mouth opened and closed without words. I said I did not do it for thanks. I did it because they were my family, even when they treated me like I was not theirs. But I wanted her to know who was truly there for her. Tears filled her eyes. Not the dramatic kind she sometimes used in public. Real tears. She whispered my name like it was the first time she said it with meaning. Before I could reply, movement near the dance floor caught my attention. I turned and saw the necklace on the ground. My grandmother's necklace. Sloan must have thrown it during the chaos. Garrett walked over and picked it up carefully, like it was fragile. He stared at it, face tight with emotion. Then he brought it to me. He said it was always supposed to be mine. He said he did not know Mom gave it away. He said he was sorry. Then he placed it in my hand. The weight felt right, like something lost was finally returned. My mother watched, crying openly. She said she had been wrong about everything. I did not argue. I did not pile on. There would be hard talks later. Right then I was exhausted. A guest wandered over and asked if the party was still happening. They looked confused but hopeful, like they still wanted a fun night after all that drama. I looked around. The ice sculptures were melting. The champagne fountain still flowed. Some guests had left, but others stayed, clearly determined to get something out of the evening. I shrugged and signaled the DJ to keep playing. Why not? The night was already strange. A little dancing would not make it worse. 3 weeks later, I sat in my office at the Monarch Hotel, looking out at the city's skyline. Morning sun poured through the windows. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. The Whitmores were finished. Federal prosecutors had enough evidence for multiple charges. Sandra Williams sat in custody, waiting for trial. Her bail was set high enough that even her so-called wealthy partners could not touch it. Turns out when you steal from people for years, you do not build many friends. The story stayed in local news for about a week. Headlines talked about a hotel owner exposing con artists at a family engagement party. One headline even called me the stinky country girl who owned the room. I framed that one. It hangs in my office where I can see it every morning. Garrett visited me yesterday. It was the first time he saw my office, my staff, and the life I built. He walked around touching things like he could not believe they were real. He said he spent years thinking he knew who I was. He admitted he was wrong. I told him we had a lot of time to make up for. I told him maybe we should start now. We went to lunch. A real lunch. Not a family event full of fake smiles. We talked about childhood. We talked about things we never said. It was not easy. It was not perfect. But it was honest. That was new. My mother started therapy. She called me and told me, voice small and uncertain. She said she wanted to understand why she treated me the way she did. She said she wanted to be better. I told her I appreciated it. I told her we could go slowly. Trust takes time. But at least we were building something now instead of watching it crumble. This morning I hosted a business breakfast in the hotel restaurant. Investors. Partners. People discussing expansion. Normal work. A young woman walked in looking nervous. She wore simple clothes. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her eyes were wide as she took in the elegant room, clearly feeling like she did not belong. One investor, a man with too much money and not enough manners, made a comment loud enough for others to hear. He asked who let her in and said the event was private. I stood up. I walked to the young woman and greeted her warmly. I said I was glad she came. Then I turned to the room and introduced her properly. I explained she was the recipient of the Birch Hospitality Scholarship. I said she grew up in a small town, worked 2 jobs through community college, and was about to start a top hotel management program in the fall. The room went quiet. The rude investor suddenly stared at his coffee like it was fascinating. I led the young woman to a seat at my table, the same table as the investors, the same table as the people who assumed they were better than her. She whispered thank you, overwhelmed. I told her not to thank me yet. I told her the real work was just beginning. And I told her something I learned the hard way. If she ever felt like she did not belong somewhere, She should remember that the people who build the most beautiful things often start with nothing but stubbornness and a dream. She smiled. After breakfast, I stood in the lobby watching guests come and go. Business travelers, tourists, families, all of them walking across floors I owned, sleeping in rooms I maintained, enjoying service my staff delivered, unaware of the woman who built it. And that was fine. I did not need everyone to know my name. People will always try to make you feel small because of where you came from. Let them. While they are busy looking down on you, they will not see you rising. I learned that lesson long ago in a small town where I was never good enough, never perfect enough, never enough of anything. I carried that lesson through years of struggle and doubt, and people assuming I would fail. And now I stood in my hotel, surrounded by what I built. The stinky country girl. Only now, she smelled success coming from a mile away.